Hello and welcome to How to Organize Your Head and Workspace When Working Remotely. My name is Bethany Dennis. I'm with the Rutgers Center for HR and Leadership Development, and I'll be your host and moderator. Today's webinar will discuss some best practices for navigating the challenges of working remotely, including managing disruptions and avoiding burnout, setting up your remote workspace, structuring your day, and optimizing productivity. This executive and professional education webinar is presented by the Rutgers School of Management and Labor Relations Center for HR and Leadership Development, which develops and delivers innovative learning and development solutions that strengthen and advance the individual, workforce, and organization as a whole through a powerful combination of expert class instruction and peer interaction led by distinguished Rutgers faculty, thought leaders, and industry experts. This webinar is scheduled for 45 minutes with Q&A at the end. Participants are muted, so please submit your questions via the GoToWebinar questions box, and then we're going to answer them at the end. This webinar is being recorded, and a link to the presentation will be sent to you via email. Now it is my pleasure to introduce our speakers. Dr. Loubna Erraji is a certified executive and performance coach, adjunct faculty, and neuroscientist. She is currently the managing director of executive education at Rutgers School of Management and Labor Relations. And in her current role, she supports corporate clients with the design and development of leadership training programs. And Redler is a senior program director for Rutgers Executive and Professional Education and works to identify new clients and designs, develops and delivers custom solutions in HR, management, leadership, women's leadership, diversity and inclusion, and healthcare. Welcome, Loubna and Anne. Loubna, over to you.
Thank you, Bethany, and thank you all for joining us today. So in these challenging times of volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, everyone is experiencing behavioral and emotional challenges. Behavioral challenges that can be induced by the lack of control over the situation. Emotional challenges that might include stress, anxiety, sadness, or fear. We cannot control this pandemic situation, but we can control how to respond to it. And again, let's remember that we are all in this together. So over the past couple of weeks, many of us have had to become virtual learners, educators, and professionals for the first time. And the experience has created new practical challenges as well as emotional ones for both managers and employees. Indeed, managers are leading teams virtually, teams are working remotely. Some people, along with being part of a virtual team, are also dealing with sickness, homeschooling, or any other chores. So as a leader, how can you manage your headspace while managing virtually the disruptions in your environment, while you're managing your teams and managing your workspace? So today's agenda, what we thought might be helpful to discuss is to cover how leaders can navigate some of these challenges, both by managing their headspace and their workspace. The first step is to bring awareness to what's happening to us and why we are feeling many emotions the way we do. These are, for example, some questions we can ask ourselves every day to be aware of our emotional state of mind and to think about how we can manage that state of mind. While some people might feel worried and anxious, others might actually consider these times as an opportunity to reflect and expand. Before I dive into the science behind the psychology of our behavior, I would love for you to please type in the chat box, how are you feeling today and how have you been holding up? So I'll give you a minute and then Bethany, if you could please share a couple of comments from the chat box, that'd be great.
Absolutely. We have one person who said motivated and encouraged. That's very good. Thank you. The sun being out definitely helps. Absolutely, Mary Kate. Okay. Missing close family. Yeah, me too. Sun's out. Yeah. Yes, the sun absolutely helps.
Yeah.
Anxious. maintaining,
Take a
uncertain,
deep
still
breath.
trying to adjust, overwhelmed, well rested. Well, that's good.
Yeah.
Apathetic. Yeah, that's a good word. Missing my team and stressed, and it's really hard to relax. Tell me about it. A little
Mm.
sluggish,
Mm-hmm.
and 3 kids being home. Yeah, we're going to talk about that.
Oh, good luck. Good luck. Thank you so much
Frustrated
for
by
sharing.
technology. Yeah,
Yeah.
preach it. Yeah.
Okay, this is amazing. We will be covering all of these topics. We're really grateful you have joined us. And for those of you who feel anxious and worried, please take a deep breath. Breathe, breathe, breathe. All right. Okay. So I would like to discuss the psychology behind everything we feel and behind our behavior. Our brain is wired in a way that we like planning and we prefer certainty. We are intolerant for uncertainty and social anxiety. And a couple of weeks ago, when the cases of coronavirus were increasing, people started stockpiling food and goods because they were uncertain about the situation. The lack of control over the situation created anxiety and stress. Uncertainty amplifies those emotions. And for example, hearing about the unavailability of toilet paper made everyone rush to the supermarket to get some. That's what we call the nerd mentality bias. It could have been anything else, any other good. So during those times of uncertainty, we also perceive the negativity bias. That's the notion that even when of equal intensity, things of a more negative nature, for example, unpleasant thoughts, emotions, social interactions, traumatic events, have a greater effect on one's psychological state than neutral events or positive events. So what's happening right now? Why are we feeling these different emotions of anxiety, worry, and stress? It's because we feel threatened. We feel threatened because we cannot control the situations. Neuroscience research shows that our brain is wired in a way that we like planning and we prefer certainty, like I just mentioned. There's a lot of research on the threat and reward response. That's a neurological mechanism that governs a great deal of human behavior. I will be mentioning a lot of Dr. David Rock's and other neuroscientists' research today. So this threat and reward response is about minimizing threat and maximizing reward. The way we stay alive is to recognize past threats and avoid them. The current situation is one of its kind, and many of us have felt threatened, anxious, and worried, and not sure how to respond or how to adjust. When we experience a stressful situation, we release stress hormones like cortisol, and this shuts down our immune system. When we are exposed to unexpected situations, there's an activation of primitive area of the brain called the limbic system. And the neurons are activated, the stress hormones are released, there's a perception of danger, and we have a pure response to threat, the fight or flight response. I'm sure you have all heard about that. So let me talk to you about the different levels of threat. There are 3 levels of threat, and they activate different brain systems. The first one, level 1, is in our broader environment. We are more alert, but we are not alarmed and we don't get a big push of cortisol. The second level of threat is level 2, and that one is in our neighborhood. There's a threat in your environment, but now it's coming closer to your neighborhood. Now you are very alert and you're hearing every sound and noise. Your alarming systems are going off, your heart rate is up, your cortisol production is up, your immune system is starting to drop to save resources. So basically what's happening is that you realize that there's a danger coming and you're telling yourself, I'll be careful. Okay, the third level, level 3 of threat. This is the one that's upon us. In this case, all your systems shut down. You get high spike of adrenaline, your cortisol levels are the highest, You're thinking in a more irrational way. It's not good for thinking. The reasoning is low, your immune system is messed up. And when you're feeling this way, you want someone to calm you down and give you a little bit of certainty. So basically, we want to stay in levels 1 or 2. And a lot of people might be at level 3 and feel that their thoughts are all over the place. This can apply to any one of us, to our teams, to our family members, to our friends. And the big part of the threat is how we do the interpretation of it. We want to make sure that we reconcile the facts with the emotions. We want to make sure we interpret correctly the information coming from the news, information coming from colleagues, family members. Otherwise, we'll be experiencing high levels of anxiety. And what we need to do is to make sure we are in a manageable state of threat so that we are able to think and reason. So let me talk to you about situations that impact the threat levels. SCARF situations have been reported as the 5 situations that create strong threats and rewards. Why is our brain exploding? What's happening now? What's happening now is that there's a multiplier effect and the stronger threats are unexpected. And this SCARF model is actually a management model that involves 5 domains of human social experience. As a manager, you can influence and make these situations either better or worse for your team. By giving people a small relative increase in the SCARF, you could actually bring their levels of threats down. So let's look at the first one, status. It's the relative importance to others. And low status usually induces high cortisol levels. So what you can do, you can connect with everyone at personal level and acknowledge their valuable contribution during these challenging times, for example. Certainty, ability to predict the future. I mean, we all crave certainty and familiar situations like I mentioned before. And what's happening now, there's a lot of uncertainty and it's registering as an error. We're not sure what will happen. We have no idea what will happen to our finances, what will happen to the economy. And maybe one thing you can do, just provide people with some certainty. A very basic example, maybe you can schedule meetings with your team every day at the same time. It's really basic, but it might help some people. Autonomy, sense of control over events. Stress remains under control when people feel that they can make their own decisions. So let's think about that. Your team is now working remotely and you can hold everyone accountable and just trust that they will work with integrity and deliver what's needed for the team's success. And that will definitely make people feel much better. Relatedness, sense of safety with others, the need to make strong connections. I know that now, we are all in social distancing and not sure how we will keep relating to each other. However, we're all craving for that relatedness. And the way to stay connected is to talk to people and see them face to face on camera. And we'll be covering more of that. And do it on a daily basis. It's very, very helpful. And finally, fairness, perceptions of fair exchanges. What you could do is to make sure that your team members are acknowledged and that they feel that they're treated fairly. So how can we put the SCARF to work? As a leader, every action you take and decision you make either supports or undermines levels of status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness. This is why leading is very difficult. When a leader is self-aware, it gives the team a feeling of safety, even in uncertain environments. It makes it easier for them to focus and perform. And now, more than ever, leaders need to stay sane and manage their headspace. So just to summarize, I just want to talk about some final thoughts on how to manage your headspace. Keep the stimulations, of course, the negative ones, to a minimum. For example, limit the time listening to the news, practice meditation, gratitude, positive affirmations. If you're not used to meditating, you can start with 2 minutes, 5 minutes, and keep building into it. It's something I do every single morning, and it makes my life easier. Keep an open and continuous connection with your team. Be personable and human. As a leader, it's okay to be vulnerable. No one has everything figured out. Apply servant leadership. Make your team feel great and make them feel successful. Share your skills with others. Everybody needs support during these times. And encourage your team to develop skills they've been meaning to focus on, such as online learning. And I'm not saying this from an opportunistic perspective, but from providing opportunities to everyone to continue growing and feeling valuable. And one more thing, the team can be creative. Okay, I'll pass it now to Anne.
Thank you, Loubna. So the first thing I'd like to do, first of all, good morning to everyone and thanks for joining us today. And it would be a great idea if some of you could type in chat what some of your biggest challenges have been working remotely from home. So we've all been catapulted into this new world of work. We've been rocketed into a new work dimension. And it all happened so fast, and so many of us were just not prepared for this. May I have the next slide?
And I have some responses if you want to hear them.
Go ahead.
We've got people are distracted, ability to stay focused, network issues, personal connection with my team members, staying focused and motivated, and finding meaningful work for each day. There's less work and they're less busy, so there's less adrenaline, and they're lacking the structure. And sharing the load with a partner who's also teleworking and sharing the technological bandwidth, yeah, that's a problem. Staying off the web and the internet for news, of course. All right, that's just some of them. Just wanted to share those.
Thank you so much, Bethany. So we'll be talking about all of those things today. May I have the next slide, Loubna? So we're all creatures of habit, and now is a very important time for us to create those productive and healthy habits. So let's take this time in this new world of work to focus on the positive. Now, research shows that it takes between 21 and 66 days to create a new habit. It's not an all or nothing process. If you miss a day, that's okay. So it's really important to establish a routine and get used to it. And you might want to start your day by getting ready, changing out of your sleepwear or out of your pajamas and preparing yourself for work. So you might want to set a reminder or an alarm on your phone. It's important to establish that routine of starting work and ending work every time at the same day. There may be some of you who can't do that, but for those of us who can, it's really important in helping us establish that routine. It's also a good idea to schedule in your breaks, schedule in your lunch, and when you do these things, get up from your workspace and walk around, take your dog for a walk, play with your children for a little while. And you might want to set a reminder or an alarm on your phone so that you're keeping yourself in this routine. Something else that's also really good to do is to practice remote water cooler bonding, or having that virtual cup of coffee with your colleagues, or a happy hour. So many of us have created wonderful friendships at work, and now is an important time for us to maintain those friendships, to have that connection with people we work with. It's a great time for idea exchange, innovation can arise out of it, and try and have fun during these water cooling bonding periods if you can. May I have the next slide? One of the things that I also wanted to mention was there was an article in Forbes magazine that talks about 5 ways successful people can start their day. So the first one is to tackle your email in the AM. The second suggestion they have is to give back before work starts. Try to start each day by helping someone else. They also suggest drinking your coffee between 9:30 and 11. Also, as I mentioned earlier, get moving during your lunch. Get up, go for a walk, exercise. And then each day, ask yourself a self-improvement question before you go to bed. Can you be better than you were the day before? So working from home tends to blur the boundaries between work and personal life. And because of that, it's essential that you create a designated space for working. Many of us do not have the luxury of a dedicated room or a home office. You might be working at your dining room table or your kitchen table. And if you have a smaller living space, you may have to designate a corner of the room. And if more than one is working from home, try whenever possible to have those separate working spaces. It's also important that you try and keep your workspace organized and tidy. So one of the things that I've done is I'm using my empty Amazon box as my file cabinet. So at the end of each day, I work from my dining room table, I take all the things off my dining room table, and I put them into my file cabinet, so I have my personal and my work life separated as much as I can. So let your team, your clients, and your family know when you're available. If you're working on a project, don't constantly check your email. It's okay to turn your phone and your instant messenger off. And set an alarm for a designated period of time that you can dedicate to that project. And it's also very important to not be overly available and operate on a crazy schedule. Just because you're working from home doesn't mean you have to be available 24 hours a day. Now, I do understand there are some people, based upon their industry, they may have to have availability outside of their normal working hours due to our current situation and time. So it's also important that you let your family members know when you're not available. You might tell them when the door is shut or your headphones are on that you are not to be disturbed. And you're unfortunately going to have to practice saying no. So it's important also to keep your team updated when your schedule changes. Use calendar invites as reminders. And you might also consider sharing your calendar with your teammates. That way, everyone can be respectful of each other's times. And when you're sharing your calendar, be sure to include your lunch breaks and other breaks that you schedule for yourself. So now let's talk a little bit about technology. We're all being asked to use technology now to stay connected and move our business forward. And some of the challenges of remote working are a mutual lack of trust, stereotypes of what kind of work can be done remotely. Employees are not used to working from home and they can lose enthusiasm and suffer from loneliness. And another challenge is creating a responsive technology. So when you're talking about a mutual lack of trust as a challenge, it's important to establish a foundation of trust by empowering employees and managers. And we talk about the stereotype of working from home. This is a time now where creativity can be used more than ever. You'll be surprised at what you can do remotely. Don't just think about it as what you've always typically done as remotely. So for employees who are losing enthusiasm and suffering from loneliness, managers should set accurate expectations and really enable those supportive interactions and to create a responsive technology. So what you need to do is you need to stress test your technology. And being on technology for all of us can be exhausting. It's something that we're not used to. I know when I spend a whole day and I'm on a Zoom meeting or a WebEx meeting all day, I'm more tired by the end of the day than I was when I drove through a traffic jam into the office every day. But let's talk about stress testing your technology. And that you can do this by the following ways. You need to ensure that your business critical applications and software can be accessed and used remotely. Familiarize yourself with different technology platforms like Zoom, like WebEx, GoToMeetings, Microsoft Teams. This is especially important if you're working with clients outside of your organization, so you can feel comfortable when you're in a web conferencing situation with your client. And also, please call on your IT team when needed, but we also have to be very respectful of their time right now because they are being pulled in so many different directions. But it might be, if you're having a problem with technology, don't be embarrassed if it seems difficult. Call on your technology people, schedule a time when you can meet with them, and let them help you understand how to use your platforms and become familiar with them. So could we have the next slide, please, Loubna? So let's talk about web conferencing etiquette. So it's a good idea to connect to your web conference a few minutes early in case you have to run something. Make sure that you're up and available when the meeting is starting. Of course, we all know we need to check our Wi-Fi, we need to check our internet. We want to remove clutter and personal items around you. This helps you focus on the meeting that you're attending. It's also important to avoid background noise. And what I mean by that is that we all know the UPS guy is standing on our porch waiting to ring the doorbell just as we're about to talk, and then Fluffy goes nuts. So if you have a dog, you might want to put him in another room. You might want to occupy your children elsewhere. Just avoiding that background noise. It's respectful to your colleagues. It helps the web conference run more smoothly. You also might want to consider using a headset if you have one to reduce distractions. Could we have the next slide, please? So keep your device, your phone, your computer, your iPad on mute unless you're speaking. Again, this is being respectful to the other people that are on the web conference. Try to speak clearly. Sometimes our connections are not great, but don't talk too loudly. And when you're in a web conference or you're in an online meeting, give respect to the participants. Let them ask questions and finish speaking before you might want to respond or add something to the conversation. It's also important to limit side conversations. That can be very distracting to the meeting. And it's important to direct questions to a specific individual who might be on the web conference. May I have the next slide, please, Loubna? May I have the next slide?
It's on.
Let's talk about optimizing concentration. So it's very important to stay informed. We all want to practice social distancing and quarantine guidelines. It's important to stay informed on daily government updates. So focusing on work can be normalizing. It can provide a sense of meaning and a sense of calm in a very disrupted world. So I was reading an article from Forbes again on how to focus on your work when all you can think about is COVID-19. And they had 5 very good suggestions. So you want to set a boundary. And what I mean by that boundary is in the morning when you wake up, when you're having your coffee, maybe allow yourself 30 minutes for the news and the media. And then allow yourself 30 minutes in the evening for the news and the media. And set an alarm so you can manage your time. Identify something else to focus on. For example, starting a new hobby, doing an old hobby, reading a new book. Focus on what you know. Resist letting yourself spiral out of control with what ifs. Plan for contingencies, but spend time on meaningful activities like work-related tasks and staying connected with family and friends. Focus on the benefits of work. Avoid thinking about the difficulties, how hard work has become now, how difficult it is, and focus on what your positive outcomes can be and the impact that it can have on your career, your colleagues, and your clients. And then finally, focus on other people. Studies show that helping others contributes to happiness. This is a great time now to find opportunities to help one of your coworkers. May I have the next slide, please? So let's talk a little bit about collaboration and innovation. So there are three components in collaboration. There's the technical component, there's the operational component, and then there's the emotional feelings that we're all having, feelings like frustration, anger, isolation and being alone. And anxiety and fear is contagious. So now is the time when we need to have that high touch communication, that clarity of communication, that self-care and caring for your teams. And it's so important to have that human face-to-face contact whenever possible. I'll give you an example that I experienced several years ago in my work career. I worked on a virtual team and we were all across the country and none of us had ever seen each other before. We only heard our voices. So it was right when Google Hangout came out and our manager decided to schedule a Google Hangout call. And at that time, it only worked if you had a camera on your computer. But I'll never forget that first Google Hangout meeting we had when all of a sudden, the voices that I heard for months suddenly came to life and they were real people. That face-to-face interaction went so far in establishing collaboration and teamwork and really bonding with those people that were on your team. Now, there may be some of us who really don't like to be on video. So you might want to try something. You might want to show your face at the beginning of the web conferencing, and then maybe check in again in the middle. And then maybe at the end of the meeting, show your face again and check in. Try to get used to sharing your video in small increments because people want to see you. They want to see you because it helps them connect with you. So I just want you all to remember that focusing on work can be normalizing and can provide that sense of meaning and calm in this very disrupted period. So it's important to get back to your colleagues quickly. Provide frequent updates to your work, share your screen, share your calendar. Choose your words carefully in your email. A good rule of thumb is if you go back and forth twice, pick up the phone and then create some weekly action and hot list for specific assignments. Back to you, Loubna.
Thank you, Anne. Okay, so we thought we would add a couple of tips for those of you who are not only managing a team or being part of a virtual team, but also managing a team at home. Those of you who have kids to homeschool, parents to take care of, or other living creatures to take care of. The most important thing is to take care of yourself. if you want your children to stay calm during those difficult times, as a parent, you need to stay calm as well. And if needed, feel free to reach out for professional support. Some activities had to be canceled because of the pandemic situation. So it's very important to validate feelings of anger and disappointment and talk to your kids. It's sad that you had to cancel the spring break travel plans or the school play or the sleepover party, but let's think about it. We are safe. Frame what you are doing and the set of actions that each family member can take to help. Emphasize agency and reframe. Look on the bright side of things. These are, of course, uncertain times, but there's more family time now than that everyone is home. So a lot of bonding time. On another hand, acknowledge that work schedule might be asynchronous for some of your team members, and share the concern with your team, share the concern with your manager. And finally, focus on community, both local and global. Talk out loud about how you're going to check in on your neighbors to make sure they have all they need, how you're going to check on your family and friends. So, yeah. Okay, let's see. Okay, so to close this webinar, I just wanted to tell you again that we are really grateful to be able to provide support as much as possible. And we hope that this was helpful to you. And before I close, I also wanted to share more specifically how we support our clients and how we might be able to provide support to you and your teams as well. Our center at the School of Management and Labor Relations offers executive and professional education programs in different areas such as human resource management, women's leadership, diversity inclusion, healthcare, and management development overall. We had some of our programs that were scheduled for this spring, but we had to postpone the start dates, and we are waiting to resume normal business operations in person until, of course, we receive the authorization from the university and the state. And in the meantime, we are expanding our offerings based on increased demand for learning remotely. So we will keep working with our current corporate clients to offer custom programs and support them with any specific demands that they need right now. We will keep offering online programs, webinars, and workshops on different topics. And actually, we have one workshop scheduled for April 20th on social toolkit for working during and after the pandemic. It will be offered by Dr. Jessica Method, and she will cover things like taking stock of your current networks, covering various techniques for assembling a personal board of advisors and learning how to leverage these advisors to ease work strains during and after the pandemic. We will also develop a panel discussion on leading virtual teams. We'll cover challenges of virtual teams, what are the things to think about, how to lean into technologies, and how to continue building trust and managing conflicts even while working remotely. And we will be offering also a workshop on team and peer coaching. It's called Move Forward Group Coaching Program. So we'll cover team peer coaching. You will be able to learn how to coach your peers, how to receive individual peer coaching in order to help you achieve your goals. So please stay on the outlook for our upcoming offers and feel free to reach out to us if you have any specific questions. Just stay in touch, and we are here to support you. And thank you again for joining us today. Back to you, Bethany.
Okay, thank you so much. So we're going to just take a few questions. There's a lot of people logged in, so if you have a question that was not answered and you want to see if we have you get a response, just type it in the questions box. But first, I'm going to ask a question that we've been getting a lot from our customers, and that's what's the thing you would recommend to leaders to focus on the most during this time?
Sure, Bethany, I can take this question. So, like I mentioned earlier, I mean, it's really, really important that you take care of yourself first before taking care of others. It's important to practice breathing exercises, meditation, gratitude. You need to take care of your mindset, of your body, of your spirit, of everything. Take care of yourself, and then you'll be able to feel great and take care of other people, your family and your team. And yeah, like I said, it's really essential that leaders are in a good state of mind to be able to make sound decisions and lead.
Thank you. Another question that maybe people might be thinking of is, do you think that right now is a good time to invest in coaching, and why should managers hire coaches?
This is a great question. Okay. So usually the main reason why coaches are hired is to support high performers and facilitate their transition. And the role of coaches is to support leaders and their teams improve productivity, organizational performance overall. And what you would notice is that when leaders start working with a coach, they realize that there are many underlying personal and emotional challenges that need to be addressed for a manager to be a better leader. So again, this goes back to the previous question that you asked. Everything is connected, right? The personal state of mind and the performance. So it's very, very important to take care of ourselves. And anyway, the short answer is yes, definitely. This is the perfect time to catch up on things that we usually do not have time to complete. For example, people should invest in coaching if they're interested in that, but also in online learning and focusing on that hobby that they had on the back of their mind. And yeah.
Thank you. Online learning, like attending today's webinar. Thank you all for joining. So I don't see any other questions, but if you have any
Bethany,
follow-up questions, yes, sorry, go ahead, Ann.
this is Ann. I'd just like to add something. I'm not sure if we mentioned this earlier, but to those of you who are still on the webinar today, we did reach our capacity today. So if you have any colleagues or friends who want to participate in this webinar, we'll be doing it again next Thursday at 11.
Yes, thank you, Ann.
Thank you. Yeah, we're at capacity, and we're also going to be sending a link to the recording of this presentation. We're going to email it to you all afterwards. But if there's, we would love to have your colleagues, if they weren't able to join us next Thursday, April 9th at 11. So that's going to conclude today's webinar. So a link of the recording of the presentation is going to be emailed to you. And for more information on Rutgers Similar and our executive and professional education, please visit our website, which is similar.rutgers.edu/content/executive and professional education. Thank you, Ann and Loubna, so much for presenting, and thank you all for taking the time to join us. We are going to be hosting additional webinars and online workshops over the coming weeks, so just please reach out for details with any other questions. Thank you again for joining. Take care.
Thank you.